The human realm was prosperous. The human realm was prosperous. Because of the human ancestor, the human realm had the strongest lineup of cultivators in the 7 realms. The human ancestor was the god during the Age of the Gods. After the collapse of the heavenly path and catastrophe hit the world, he was revered as the progenitor of human beings. The revival of humankind and the creation of the power of divine human were among the list of his feats. He believed a man could defeat a god, and if one were powerful enough, they would become a god themselves. The human ancestor had been ruling the order of the human realm and teaching them the way of cultivation, causing humanity to thrive. The cultivators of the human realm had been revering him as their god. He was the faith of the human realm and was extolled by his people. Yet rumors have been circulating everywhere lately, saying that the human ancestor was overly ambitious and that he desired to control the entire 7 realms and topple the heavenly path to take its place. Nevertheless, cultivators from different realms had distinct opinions. The human ancestor was the faith of the cultivators of the human realm, as they regarded him as their god. If he were to reign over 7 realms and control the order of the world, they would be glad to see it happen. Perhaps that was the right track for them. In fact, their people had been waiting for the day when the human ancestor would rule the world, control the world order, and restore justice for the human realm. The human realm was filled with countless continents. Each of the continents was home to many cultivators of different cultivation levels. It was a big world. At that time, many cultivators from several continents raised their heads after sensing some unusual activity in the sky. The odd feeling of an imminent threat gradually became stronger. Without warning, rays of divine light beamed from the sky. It was dazzling and blinding to the eyes of the onlookers. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. What is going on? No matter where they were looking from at that moment, everyone saw the same scene that played out. After lifting their heads to glance at the sky, they were all taken aback. What was that? Did something happen to the world? Following the glaring light, divine sound could be heard echoing across the vast sky with its solemn resonance. Right then, the world saw the sky split open. From the other side of the opening, silhouettes of divine humans descended from high altitude and came into the sight of the masses. Divine light circulated the figures of the divine humans, making them appear majestic and esteemed. Their gods. The hearts of the multitude of cultivators across the great continents were pounding like mad. They were rooted to the spot by the visual impact. It was not just a god, but multiple gods who showed up simultaneously. Where did these gods even come from? There was an uproar throughout the entire human realm. The people there were taken aback upon seeing the gods that appeared out of nowhere in the sky. Rumor had it that the human ancestor had many great emperor-level Tianshan under his command. Yet they had never expected him to be in charge of an army of the gods, a terrifying sight to behold. Furthermore, these gods seemed to be dwelling at a different altitude. All of a sudden, a humongous countenance appeared in the sky. That face covered every corner of the human realm, as if it was the sky. So, everyone could see it clearly. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Similar voices reverberated across the entire human realm. The same greeting could be heard from every corner of the boundless continents, causing the atmosphere to tremble. Needless to say, that countenance belonged to the human ancestor. Many cultivators became frenzied after recovering from their shock. Was the human ancestor prepared to rule the world with his army of the gods? The crowd instantly turned zealous and delirious at the sight of it, as if they had been waiting for this day to come. The human realm would rule the world and become the supreme of 7 realms. All these years, I've been ruling the order of the human realm and improving the way of cultivation in this realm. Then, I discovered the predecessor gods from the Battle of the Gods and tried to help them make a comeback to revive the glory days of the Age of the Gods. And now I've made it. His voice traveled across the entire realm. Everyone in the human realm could hear him vividly. These Tianshan were gods from the Age of the Gods during ancient times. They were revived by the human ancestor and made their resurgence. What a fantastic achievement! A new chapter of history was unfolded through the feet of the human ancestor. It was unprecedented and would never happen again. Such an incredible accomplishment would surely be magnified and extolled for many generations to come as the holiest commemoration. I've seen the apocalypse of the gods and the tribulation of the heavens with these eyes. Since then, I've been working toward restoring the world order and reviving the golden age of ancient times. As of now, some people are actively destroying the world order. First of all, Ji Wudao wished to seize control of the heavens. Then Dong Huang the Great allied with some other individuals. As it stands, we need to restore peace to the world. Today, I shall exact justice from those who polluted the world with their wickedness. By doing this, we will unite the world and restore order. The voice of the human ancestor resounded through the 9 heavens until every corner of the realm. In his short message, he raised the morale of his people to fight for the cause of the human realm. The people in that realm were burning with zeal as they looked forward to the day it happened. A united great path and the world. I'll let bygones be bygones. Now those who are willing to create a new order may fight by our side. But those who dare to defy us, we will have no choice but to eliminate them. The human ancestor went on. The human realm has been raising troops and building up forces for years now. I do not wish to start a war, but someone has to rectify the world. Today I'll lead the troops of the human realm for a crusade. Those who are willing to fight with us should be prepared for war at any time. Yes, Your Highness. Countless cultivators on the vast continents bowed as they received the decree from the human ancestor. They were willing to fight for the order of the human realm. The human ancestor would lead them to conquer and rule over 7 realms. The forces of 7 realms received the news of the commotion of the human realm firsthand. Tumults broke out at the imperial palaces that received the information the earliest. The people in the divine prefecture, Western Heaven World of Buddhism, Heavenly Realm, Empty Divine Realm, the Dark World, and the Devil World were shocked upon hearing that. Soon, everyone began their preparation work. How would the human ancestor start the war? Would he lead the mighty cultivators of the human realm by himself for his expedition? Besides, the human ancestor had already revived the ancient gods. Who in the world could stand against the human ancestor? On the spirit mountain of Western Heaven World of Buddhism, the pantheon of Buddhas looked dignified as the light of Buddha radiated the entire place. After raising their heads to look in a faraway direction, they put their hands together and recited the Buddhist sutra in unison. While Dark Lord stared at the sky in Dark World, a spine-chilling dark storm blustered violently, as if the tribulation of darkness was about to manifest. Devil Emperor peered at Devil Abyss from Devil World. For some reason, Devil Abyss became unrest, as though it was a premonition of imminent disaster. How terrifying was the ancient army of Tianshan, the Devil World, Dark World, Heavenly Realm, Divine Prefecture, and World of Buddhism. Which of them would rise to the top? A worldwide calamity was about to unfold. Yet, no one had expected the human ancestor, the wielder of the sword of justice and believer of humanity's righteousness, to be the war instigator. The Devil Emperor stared at the Devil Abyss in contemplation. Truthfully, they were not fully prepared yet. But who would have thought that the human ancestor would be one step ahead of them in completing his mission and starting a war that would get them involved? How would this worldwide catastrophe turn out to be? This day would become a pivotal moment in history. The people of future generations would remember this day as the prologue to a brand new era. The sky above the entrance area of the dark court trembled all of a sudden. At the same time, rays of crimson divine lights beamed across the firmament. The sky above the entrance area of the dark court trembled all of a sudden. At the same time, rays of crimson divine lights beamed across the firmament. The cultivators of Dark Court immediately looked up into the sky with their hearts pounding like mad. What had just happened? Everyone inside the court felt a suffocating god's might pressurizing them. Boom! The sky was split open after a loud bang was heard. Countless silhouettes of Tianshan showed up in the sky the next moment. Each of them emanated formidable emperor's might from their physical bodies. The governing entity of the Dark World, Dark Court, was quivering. Colors drained from the faces of the cultivators in the court after seeing the lineup in the sky. Was that the Tianshan army? Staring at the peak of Dark Court, They saw a destructive dark divine light radiating before a silhouette in a mask appeared, giving off a mysterious vibe. Yet the aura unleashed by that individual was hair-raising. "Is the human ancestor not coming?" she asked indifferently in an aloof tone. Who would have thought that the commander of the Tianshan army was just the direct disciple of the human ancestor, Di Hao? Despite that, he was just a successor to human realm in name only. What could he expect to inherit from an ambitious man like the human ancestor? Please keep reading on Wuxia World. No matter what, Di Hao would always be beneath the human ancestor. "I'm here." The human ancestor's voice could be heard saying that. The countenance of the human ancestor was seen in the sky, but it was not his main body. "The Dark Sovereign, you've brought darkness to the world ever since you ruled the Dark World. By right, I should have wiped out the darkness with the sword of justice. But I'm willing to grant you a second chance, provided that you lead the army of the Dark World to strike the alliance of the heavenly realm and divine prefecture," the human ancestor said with a condescending tone, as if he was the monarch of the world, giving the Dark Sovereign a chance to redeem herself. The Dark Sovereign loathed the owner of the face she was starting at. For the longest time, she had detested people who were holier than thou. She was disgusted by hypocrites more than she was by petty people. The human ancestor was the quintessence of a hypocrite. He reminded her of a detestable person. It seemed that there were many similarities between the two of them. The human ancestor deemed himself the righteousness of humanity. But was he a righteous person? "What if I say no?" the Dark Sovereign replied. "This world has been filled with darkness. If one were too obstinate to repent from their evil ways, there would be no reason for this realm to exist. The human realm shall lead its army to invade this sinful world and cleanse it from every ounce of darkness. I'm afraid the future will not look bright for the cultivators of Dark Court, including the Dark Sovereign herself," the human ancestor declared with the means to threaten them. If the Dark Sovereign were to refuse, he would lead his army to massacre all of them. "I know what you're worried about. But suppose you're willing to turn over a new leaf, uphold the integrity of humanity, and deploy your troops to the divine prefecture and heavenly realm. In that case, I will overlook the past and grant you a place in this world," human ancestor went on. Naturally, he was referring to when he attempted to finish off the Dark Sovereign. Right after he spoke, the atmosphere was instantly filled with the might of all the Tianshan that spanned across the entire Dark Court. It was almost like they would immediately eliminate the forces of Dark Court if the Dark Sovereign were to reject the offer. Should things turn out that way, could the cultivators of the Dark Court fend off the enemies? The look of the Dark Sovereign's eyes behind her mask was gloomy. She knew the human ancestor was pulling her leg. If she were to decline, he would probably order his armies to obliterate the Dark Court and send another troop to invade the Dark World. If the human ancestor were to colonize the Dark World, would it be the world she wanted? The answer was obviously no. The human ancestor was a man of hypocrisy, who boasted about being the righteousness of humanity. The human realm was a realm full of pretense and deception, so it was not a world she wanted to see. "Okay, I agree," the Dark Sovereign answered. The cultivators of the Dark Court let out a sigh of relief upon hearing that. They were afraid that the Dark Sovereign might reject the offer. If she did, they would be the first ones to be eliminated. If the gods were to launch a full-scale invasion, it would spell doom for the Dark Court. None of them would escape certain death, even if they reached the Great Emperor Plain. There were ancient Great Emperors among the lineup of the Tianshan army. How could they even hope to survive that? Good. With that, an overwhelming aura flooded the atmosphere before the Tianshan army disappeared from the Dark Court. When the Tianshan army showed up in the Dark World, the same thing happened in the empty Divine Realm and Devil World as well. The demon cloud above the sky of Devil Imperial Palace was blasting uncontrollably. The power of Devil Abyss dropped like a weight on everyone's head. When the Tianshan army arrived there, they raised their heads to look at the Devil Abyss, a primeval prison that remained intact until now, even after the collapse of the heavenly path. The face of the human ancestor was formed in the sky, while unleashing his might toward the Devil Imperial Palace. All the devil overlords who resided inside the Devil Imperial Palace glared in the same direction, with a sharp and domineering look. The appearance of the Tianshan army did not scare them even a bit. Devil Emperor, the human ancestor piped with a deafening voice. State your business, said an icy and disdainful voice from the inside of Demon God Palace. Even though the Tianshan army was before him, the Devil Emperor's tone remained peerlessly condescending. I wish to ally with you, the human ancestor said. I'm not interested, the Devil Emperor replied without showing his face at all. At that, the human ancestor furrowed his brows in displeasure. It was apparent that things played out differently here than in other locations. Nonetheless, it was how the Devil Emperor would typically behave. So he brushed it off. After I've conquered the Divine Prefecture and the Heavenly Realm, the cultivators of Devil World can leave this prison. By then, the order of the world will be altered radically, and I will surely not mistreat you, the human ancestor added. We will take care of our own matters. The silhouette of the evil emperor could be seen standing in Demon God Palace. Who are you working for? I am who I am. I do not work for anyone. Scowling at Devil Emperor, the human ancestor remarked. I'm afraid things won't go your way this time. After he was done talking, the might of Tianshan filled the entire Devil Imperial Palace. Shooting a glance at the army of great emperors, the Devil Emperor commented, I've never thought that I'd see the gods of ancient times in flesh. If you want to start a war, I can give you that. You've seen with your eyes the power of the heavenly path. And now, you shall taste the might of Devil Abyss. It went without saying that the Devil Emperor of the Devil World was a fearless man. The human ancestor went silent for a while after hearing that. The power of the Devil Abyss, he said? The human ancestor went silent for a while after hearing that. The power of the Devil Abyss, he said? Did he master the will of Devil Emperor already? Could he command the power of the Devil Abyss? The Devil Abyss was the tribulation during the creation of the world. It was brimming with unimaginable world-destroying power. Back then, the demonic lord used the Devil Abyss to cause great destruction. Although the heavenly path suppressed him, the Devil Abyss had torn up the ladder as well, causing irreversible cracks to form. After the battle of the gods, the collapse of the heavenly path happened, and it rained down the great tribulation of apocalypse. That calamity did not consist of only the heavenly path's power. Therefore, the human ancestor would have to be cautious of Devil Emperor, if the latter could command the power of Devil Abyss. The Tianshan army raised their heads and sensed the might of the Devil Abyss. Suddenly, a powerful cultivator from ancient times declared, according to legends, the Devil Abyss had existed with the heavenly path, and it can destroy the latter. But I'm not sure if this is true. Regardless of the truth, the Devil Abyss had existed until that day while the heavenly path had collapsed a long time ago. Anyone wants a taste of it? The Devil Emperor taunted as he stood there gallantly, staring at the ancient cultivator. Even though the man was facing an army of Tianshan, he remained haughty, as if he was above everyone else. Devil Emperor, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Are you willing to be stuck in the Devil Abyss, and let the whole Devil World suffer with you forever? The human ancestor incited. This war will be the biggest one the world has yet to see since the collapse of the heavenly path. After that, I will reset the heavenly law and reform everything. If you did not participate in this war, all the work you have been doing all these years would be wasted. In the end, the Devil World will remain the same. Nothing will change. Thanks for your concern, human ancestor, the Devil Emperor replied. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. Peering at the Devil Emperor, the human ancestor added. When everything is over, I shall carry out the heavenly law. Does the Devil World wish to be an independent territory? An immense pressure permeated the place when the human ancestor spoke. The Devil Emperor glared at him, knowing that the former was hiding a greater power. The Devil World will decide for itself whether it will participate in the war or not. We will be the ones to plan for the when and the how as well. We will not be coerced into fighting your war, the Devil Emperor declared in a cold tone. The Devil World will never submit to anyone. Even if the human ancestor were to seize control of the heavenly law, the Devil World would never yield to anyone. Back then, the people of the Devil World were imprisoned in the Devil Abyss, and they did not bow down to the heavenly path. Instead, The demonic lord had led 100 million of his subjects and resisted the heavenly path until it became the bat of heavenly laws. So he could not afford to end the legacy of his ancestors by being an embarrassment. Previously, he had taken part in the battle of the 6 great emperors because the human ancestor had invited him. Each of them had their agendas and were only using one another. However, things were different this time. The human ancestor did not extend an invitation, but blackmailed him with Tianshan army to join the war. If he participated in it, it would be the same as giving in to that man. It was like he had to do the human ancestor's bidding. So they were 2 different stories. If that were to happen, the devil world would never be the same anymore. So, they would only use their way to fight this war. Good. The human ancestor glared at the devil emperor and uttered. Although he wanted to lay siege to the devil world immediately and annihilate the devil imperial palace, he was still cautious about the devil abyss. If the devil emperor could command the power of the devil abyss and summon it, it would be disastrous. At this point, he did not take any unnecessary risks. Having decided what to do, he would first wipe out the forces of the divine prefecture and heavenly realm, including the Baldies of the world of Buddhism. Then he would only return to settle the score with the devil world. By then, he could order the cultivators of the dark world and empty divine realm to raid this place. Then he could finally conquer the whole world and make every being in this world his subject. The most fulfilling achievement would be ruling over the heavenly law. With that, the human ancestor left the devil imperial palace with his army and did not dare to launch an attack. As they went away, the devil emperor stood upright while watching their silhouettes disappear slowly. A great disaster was about to take place. This time, then human ancestor threatened the 7 realms. Not only did he come here, but he had also gone to the empty divine realm and the dark world to start this war. The scale of this war would be the largest since the collapse of the heavenly path. It would be a fight to take over the heavenly path. The human ancestor must have been fully prepared so that he would start a war so brazenly. This was something that had never happened before. Who would be the last one standing in this global catastrophe? The devil world could not escape the human ancestor forever. So, what kind of tribulation would he be facing this time? When human ancestor headed to the devil world, dark world, and empty divine realm, the people in the heavenly realm received the news of it relatively fast. Right then, Donghuang the Great and Yi Futian announced to the public about the fast-approaching war in heavenly realm and divine prefecture. They also urged weaker cultivators to look for a place to hide or seek shelter in the God's ruins continent through a space passage. In the world of Buddhism, Buddha Lord informed the citizens of Western Heaven about the imminent danger as well. They did not encourage the common people to enlist in the war, because it did not belong to low-level cultivators. The entire 7 realms was shaken by the sudden news. Just like everyone had predicted, the moment of peace earlier was the calm before the storm. But the storm had arrived, and it would devastate every corner of the 7 realms. Yi Futian, Donghuang the Great, and the others were gathered in the 99 heavens of the heavenly realm. The dark world and empty divine realm will be joining human realm in the war. However, the devil emperor had refused the human ancestor's offer. Donghuang the Great announced. Even in different realms, he had his way of gathering information. Needless to say, it would not be a secret since the human ancestor carried out his operation in a flashy way. It was relatively easy to hear about this since many people had seen it. Didn't the human ancestor launch attack in Devil World? Yi Futian asked as he already knew about Tianshan army's revival. A significant number of great emperors had made their comeback since the collapse of the heavenly path, and all of them were working under human ancestor to fight in his war. It has to be Devil Abyss, Donghuang the Great answered. Devil World has Devil Abyss, an ancient tribulation capable of destroying the whole world. If the Devil Emperor were to threaten the human ancestor with the Devil Abyss, even the latter would have to be prudent with his actions. At that, Yi Futian nodded. Was the Devil Abyss such a terrifying force? If that were the case, the tribulation that he had gone through back then must be the most common. The cultivators of the human realm, dark world, and empty divine realm have arrived at the borders of the divine prefecture, heavenly realm, and the world of Buddhism. Their troops are invading our realms continuously and preparing for the attack at any time now. Donghuang the Great carried on. Since the revival of the gods, our forces are pale in comparison to theirs in terms of top-tier cultivators. Futian, what do you think of this situation? They would be at a disadvantage in the battle between great emperors. Even though they had already brought a lot of time for themselves through the difference of the speed of the time flow, it was still insufficient, because the numbers of great emperors they had were far too little in comparison. If one were to look at the numbers alone, they would be at an absolute disadvantage. Donghuang the Great nodded. It was indeed good news. Donghuang the Great nodded. It was indeed good news. He had a strong hunch that the human ancestor, the one who murdered Heavenly Emperor and ended the life of his wife, was not being himself currently. That man must not have been fully recovered yet. Otherwise, he would not have to start a full-scale war. He could have just slaughtered all of them. However, the enemy could not wait any longer, for he had known about the existence of the power to change the flow of time. There would be more unknown variables the longer he delayed. Hence, he started the war immediately after the revival of the gods from ancient times. We should break up our troops, Yi Futian suggested all of a sudden. Donghuang the Great and the others were dumbfounded for a while before getting what he was trying to say. The return of the gods pulled the distance between the number of their forces, especially when it came to the great emperors. If they were to go head-to-head with their opponents when the difference between the amount of their top-tier fighters was this huge, it would be their certain death. This is a good idea, Yu Tu commented. But we do not have much time left now. He did not care about keeping up his appearances. All he wanted was to be the one who had the last laugh. I am planning to move the entire 99 heavens of the heavenly realm into the inner world, created by my micro-heavenly path. With that, I can always dispatch our troops to different battlefields for reinforcements. Besides, they can also focus on their cultivation while staying inside. If we could buy 1 year for them, it would be equal to 81 years for them, Yi Futian explained. What 81 years could change was almost unimaginable. It could bring about a radical transformation to everyone's cultivation level. There won't be a problem for Heavenly Realm and Donghuang Imperial Palace. However, the spirit mountain of the world of Buddhism has always been a holy land for the people of Western Heaven all this time. No matter what, we cannot afford to desecrate it. The imminent war will definitely involve the entire 7 realms, including the world of Buddhism. While we can break up our forces, what if the enemy were to strike the spirit mountain? I am afraid. Donghuang the Great had several concerns. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU Heavenly Realm was already in ruins for some time. Things had turned for the worse after the passing of Heavenly Emperor and the transformation of the Sovereign Princess into the Path. It was only recently that the 99 heavens of Heavenly Realm was rebuilt. Hence, if they were to break up their forces, it would not affect Heavenly Realm much. Furthermore, Yi Futian was planning to move the entire 99 heavens away. Donghuang Imperial Palace in Divine Prefecture only had 500 years of history. It was built by Donghuang the Great and governed by him all this time. Since it did not have any other history, Donghuang the Great could decide the fate of Donghuang Imperial Palace. There was nothing to regret about history. To sacrifice it for the war was nothing much. But what about the holy land of the world of Buddhism? Could the people there give it up? Spirit Mountain was the foundation of the faith of the people of Western Heaven. If the forces of Buddhism were to leave the Spirit Mountain, it might cause an uproar in the world of Buddhism. It might cause many cultivators of Buddhism to question their faith. It's not a problem for the world of Buddhism. The voice of Wutian Buddha Lord could be heard. Many great Buddhas had shown up back when Yi Futian had requested Donghuang the Great to invite the cultivators of the world of Buddhism and Donghuang Imperial Palace to his inner world for cultivation. Therefore, one of them was here to talk about the plan. If one's heart were filled with Buddhism, any place could be the Spirit Mountain, Wutian Buddha Lord continued. Your Majesty, I am a little disappointed, for you too are an erudite Buddhism practitioner. So you should not make such a silly mistake. Donghuang the Great noticed his carelessness. Then he bowed to Wutian Buddha Lord and said, You are right, great Buddha. It was thoughtless of me. The teaching of Buddhism emphasized emptiness, all is vanity. To commoners who were not knowledgeable in the teaching of Buddhism, Spirit Mountain was the holy land of the world of Buddhism. On the other hand, the true enlightened Buddhists would never be fixated on material things. In that case, it is decided then. However, I think we should inform everyone first, Futian said. I am still a bit worried whether or not the human ancestor will order the great emperors to attack the weaker ones. There was an unspoken rule for a war of this scale. Those who had walked on the path of the emperors should not lay their fingers on the weaker cultivators. Otherwise, they would bear a great sin that would eventually bring them disaster. How could a low-level cultivator stand against a great emperor? No, Donghuang the Great answered. The human ancestor cares about his reputation a lot. Although no one knows the reason, the way he rules the human realm is different from the Dark Sovereign. He has always been preaching about being the righteousness of humanity. Even during the upcoming war, he will still propagate justice and represent the righteousness of humanity to bring order to the human realm. Hence, the human ancestor will not order a fruitless killing. What about the evil emperor and the Dark Sovereign? Futian questioned, because he did not know about the other 6 great emperors as much as his father, Donghuang the Great. They will probably obey the rules. No matter what, they still have to consider their realm, Donghuang the Great replied. Futian nodded. If the great emperors were to kill uncontrollably, there would only be very few people left alive. All right. Futian bowed his head. So we shall focus on extermination. I would like to see how many of the gods are asking to be killed again, after having just made their comeback recently. I will be going back to the palace to start preparation, Donghuang the Great informed. I've already filled the Buddha in on this, Wutian Buddha Lord uttered. He had no qualms about it. He will make arrangements for the Western heaven world of Buddhism to defend itself from invasion. When push comes to shove, we will break up our people. I'm ashamed, Futian noted while bowing to Wutian Buddha Lord. This is a predestined fate. Since it is inexorable, the only thing we can do is face it together. Heavenly Emperor is a man of destiny. Everything will eventually end, Wutian Buddha Lord stated. Okay. Futian nodded. Although he was facing an inevitable doom, he remained optimistic. Since everything was bound to happen, everything would be over soon with the help from the world of Buddhism. With that, Futian began to move the 99 heavens. Meanwhile, many armies invaded the heavenly realm, divine prefecture, and the world of Buddhism like a flood. Apart from Devil World, the other 6 realms had turned into a war zone. The army of cultivators of the human realm were the ones who arrived in the heavenly realm. As for the divine prefecture, the cultivators of the empty divine realm were the ones who showed up there. Besides them, there were also many human realm combatants besieging the divine prefecture. To the enemies, taking down heavenly realm was the easiest, because it had long since declined. So they did not deploy a lot of their forces there. Lastly, the troops of the Dark Sovereign were the ones who raided the world of Buddhism. Naturally, there were cultivators of the human realm among the lineup as well. Those were the bunch who had wished to strike the world of Buddhism. So they joined forces with the army of the Dark World, hoping to find a chance to plunder the land. All cultivators had their motivation and will, so they would not follow things blindly. Some of those who took part in this war idolized the human ancestor, but some wished to seize the opportunity to improve themselves through this war, since they could train and loot cultivation resources simultaneously. While the warring age had always been the quickest time to grow oneself, it was also dangerous. Nevertheless, they had confidence that they would win this war. Since it was a battle without unforeseen factors, they would occupy the realms without breaking a sweat. The people in the heavenly imperial city were trembling in fear, because they knew war had erupted. The people in the heavenly imperial city were trembling in fear, because they knew war had erupted. The human realm led the forces of the empty divine realm and dark world to start the war. And their armies had already arrived in heavenly realm. Quick look at 99 heavens now, someone exclaimed. Many people noticed that the 99 heavens had become more perceivable. There were no barriers surrounding it anymore. Countless magnificent temples could be seen on every layer. At the top layer, they noticed a heavenly palace situated in the sky. That was the Heavenly Imperial Palace. 99 heavens had become a small world with a heavenly path. What is actually going on now? The crowds mumbled. There were troops of cultivators at different locations in the 99 heavens. They were all under the direct command of the Heavenly Emperor Palace and belonged to it. Some of them had been there for a long time, while the others had joined recently. They hovered at multiple positions of 99 heavens, a genuine Tiantian army. At the peak of the Heavenly Palace, everyone caught sight of a silhouette with white hair and surrounded by 9-color divine light. It was a spectacular sight to behold. Immediately, everyone knew that it was the current Heavenly Emperor, Futian. Futian had already merged with the remnants of the heavenly path left by his mother, so he would not leave anything behind. Turning to look at the commoners beneath him, he declared, "The human ancestor is leading the human realm, empty divine realm, and dark world to start an invasion war that will turn the 7 realms into a battlefield. Things are different than before this time. It is a worldwide invasion. So regardless of your cultivation level, you will be affected by the aftermath. In the worst-case scenario, you might face life and death situation." Heavenly Realm had just recovered from declination in recent years, so our overall forces will be weaker. When the war comes, I hope everyone can protect themselves and try to avoid the war zone as much as possible. Please find a way to survive this ordeal. This war should never involve the cultivators of the heavenly realm. But the human ancestor had insisted on making this happen and starting the war of the 7 realms. Even though I've ascended the throne and became heavenly emperor, I still couldn't prevent this war from happening. I'm ashamed of myself, but I, alongside the cultivators of the Heavenly Imperial Palace, will swear to give our all to end this war. Regardless of victory or defeat, I hope your goal is to survive this tribulation and live. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. Futian did not encourage anyone to join the war. Instead, he requested the people to avoid it as much as possible and protect themselves to survive this calamity. Futian Buddha Lord had also reached the pinnacle of cultivation and mastered celerity, so he could traverse a great distance at the speed of thought. Okay. Futian Buddha Lord nodded. I'm beyond grateful to the both of you. Futian bowed to Tianyin Buddha Lord and Futian Buddha Lord. With the help of the 2 Buddha Lords, he could recruit the people of Heavenly Realm who were willing to volunteer themselves in the war. After putting their hands together, the 2 Buddha Lords disappeared into thin air with their thoughts. Futian was not worried about the safety of the 2 of them. Tianyin Buddha Lord could pick up all the sounds across vast space and had incredibly acute sensory abilities. Futian Buddha Lord was the master of celerity. If the 2 were to coordinate with one another, hardly anyone could threaten their lives. A while later, the 2 Buddha Lords brought a troop of cultivators back. Even the people of Heavenly Imperial City were brought here as well. Fang Siyuan, do your thing, Futian ordered. Yes, master. Fang Siyuan nodded, turned around, and headed toward the army of cultivators. In the blink of an eye, the 2 Buddha Lords left the scene and headed toward other locations in Heavenly Realm. Futian stood on top of the Heavenly Palace and waited patiently. Finally, terrifying storms hit on multiple locations of the sky above the Heavenly Realm. Following that, numerous space passages appeared in many different locations. In a flash, the armies of the human realm descended from the sky. Staring downward, they played hysterical smirks on their faces. The human realm would be occupying the 7 realms, and they were the witnesses and participants of the historical moment. The 2 Buddha Lords brought more people back to the Heavenly Imperial Palace with them. With a thought, Futian covered all the cultivators in 99 heavens with a mysterious power. Right then, their bodies immediately vanished from sight, and they were brought into his inner world created with his micro-heavenly path. His troop, the Heavenly Realm Army, would cultivate inside his inner world. It was a portable army that followed him everywhere. A suffocating God's might pervaded the sky above the Heavenly Imperial City. Following the color change of the firmament, a peerless and dominating emperor's might pressurized every person in the Heavenly Imperial City. All of them felt like it was the end of the world while staring at the sky in terror. Had Tianshan army shown up already? Many figures appeared in different directions of the sky. Many figures appeared in different directions of the sky. The color of the sky above the entire heavenly imperial city changed. The frightening divine power enveloped the heavenly imperial city, as if there was a Tianshan in every direction. The cultivators of the heavenly imperial city were all terrified. They had heard that the human ancestor helped great emperors from the ancient times return. They did not think that there would be so many. How did the human ancestor revive these ancient emperors? No wonder Heavenly Emperor Yi Futian had given up the heavenly imperial palace. The great emperors of both sides were not even at the same level. The number was too different. The heavenly emperor didn't leave. Many people looked at the white-haired figure above the heavenly imperial city and started feeling worried for Yi Futian. The gods had come with murderous intent in their eyes. There were great emperors everywhere in the dome of the sky, sealing off this part of the sky. Where did those people go? A voice screamed. The human ancestor's face appeared in the sky. His aura was terrifying. Yi Futian had brought away all the cultivators of the 99 heavens. They had vanished directly. Was it the micro-world? Yi Futian glanced at the human ancestor's face and did not reply. Instead, he looked at the various gods and said, I do not know what methods the human ancestor used to help you all return. But since you are back, you should treasure it well. Do not get involved in the present conflicts. The gods all had surprised expressions at Yi Futian's words, and a powerful voice spoke out. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. You are today's great emperors all so arrogant. They had all been great emperors from the era before the heavenly path had collapsed. Some had even been super great emperors. Yi Futian was only a junior. Even though he had flashy achievements, they still felt that arrogance when he spoke to all the seniors like this. This is not the old era anymore, Yi Futian said. You all are only old gods and should get accustomed to today's cultivation world. If you retreat now, I can act like nothing has happened. And if we don't retreat? An ancient emperor asked. If you do not retreat, then it means we are mortal enemies. If you die again, you might not have the chance to return again, Yi Futian replied. Yi Futian. The human ancestor's terrible might clamped down on Yi Futian as he said, You are even more presumptuous than your father, Dong Huang. With that, he looked up to the sky and said, Dong Huang, you come out too. As soon as he spoke, a figure appeared in the sky above Yi Futian. The father and son stood one above another, surrounded by the ancient gods. Futian, this is the first time we fight together as father and son. I did not think that we would be facing the gods of ancient times. How many do you think we can kill? Dong Huang the Great asked Yi Futian. In terms of presumptuousness, he was not any lesser than Yi Futian. The father and son duo were both great emperors of the modern times. On the other side were all ancient emperors, including the human ancestor. However, the human ancestor had lived too long. He had lived from ancient times to the modern day. Just as Dong Huang the Great said, this battle was between the present and ancient emperors. The cultivators of the heavenly imperial city stood in the lower sky and gazed into the heavens. Dong Huang the Great's words made their hearts pound furiously, and hot blood ran through their veins. The father and son would fight the gods. Dong Huang the Great had asked how many they could kill. Any that we kill is an advantage for us, Yi Futian replied. Father, if mother was here and the three of us worked together, they would have no chance at all. If your mother were here, she'd be enough by herself, Dong Huang the Great responded. Shameless words. The human ancestor's words reverberated in the sky. Horrifying and turbid divine lightning appeared in the heavens, covering the sky and sun. It hung over the sky above Yi Futian and Dong Huang the Great. Boom! With one thought by Dong Huang the Great, the revelation divine power instantly enveloped the vast lands, covering the entire heavenly imperial city. All divine power within the revelation divine domain seemed to be sealed off. Those ancient gods' divine powers were also restricted. The instant that the revelation divine domain enveloped the heavenly imperial city, Yi Futian's body moved. He appeared before a great emperor in a flash, descending directly despite the distance between them, and he pushed his palm forward. Yi Futian's palm contained extremely dazzling divine light, and emperor runes were carved on it. He was incredibly domineering, and could crush everything in the world. Seal of the Heavenly Emperor. That great emperor was not a super great emperor, and his divine power was being restricted too. What welcomed him was a super strong seal of the Heavenly Emperor. It crushed down directly, and the golden emperor rune enlarged in his eyes. It was like a world. No matter how he ran, he would still be under the attack of this divine seal. Boom! Divine power transformed into Xuanwu beast protection to protect his body. But when the seal of the Heavenly Emperor blasted down, it was shattered directly. Plus, he was also being restricted by the Revelation Divine Domain. How could he counter Yi Futian's palm? Bang! With a huge sound, the Xuanwu beast was destroyed. The seal of the Heavenly Emperor blasted onto his body, shattering his physical body. His spiritual soul wanted to escape, but the Emperor rune emitted destructive divine light and directly destroyed it. His soul scattered and died. Back then, when the Heavenly Path released the Doomsday Tribulations, it had targeted the great emperors of the entire world, rather than just one person. Thus, many gods had died under the tribulations, but quite a few great emperors had survived using other methods. But Yi Futian did not give them this chance. With his absolute power, he naturally made them die from a scattered soul. Only this counted as a complete death. He had said earlier that if they did not treasure this chance at returning, they would probably not get another chance. A great emperor was killed forcefully by Yi Futian. This made the hearts of the heavenly imperial city cultivators skip a beat. However, the instant that Yi Futian had attacked, the other gods in the sky were also able to react. They released their divine powers to the max under the constraints of the Revelation Divine Domain. Many of the super great emperors had terrifying divine powers and broke through the constraints of the Revelation Divine Domain. The Chaos True Thunder swords in the sky attacked instantly, going for Yi Futian. But Donghuang the Great's figure appeared in the sky above Yi Futian. He released the Revelation Divine Domain to the max and pointed a finger at the sky, blocking many attacks descending from above. But even so, many beams of destructive divine power still streaked toward Yi Futian, landing on his body. The attacks of strong great emperors were incredibly fast. It was all in the span of one thought. Yi Futian had killed a great emperor, while surrounded by great emperors. So he naturally had to face the attacks from the other strong figures of the emperor level. But the instant that those attacks fell, 9-colored divine light wrapped around Yi Futian. They transformed into the frightening divine power of the law, and annihilated the incoming attacks directly. It was the 9 dragons' true qi. At that moment, Yi Futian was as peerless as an ancient emperor who had returned. His mother had left the heavenly path of the 99 heavens, and now, he had inherited the power of that heavenly path. Naturally, he could inherit the forces that Ji Wudao had inherited in the past. It was even more compatible for him. Whether it was the seal of the heavenly emperor of the 9 dragons' true qi, they had all been left by his mother, and he had inherited them. Just then, a streak of sword light lit up in the sky. This streak of sword light seemed to have come from outside the heavens. It passed through time and space, directly cutting apart the constraints that the Revelation Divine Domain put on the divine power. It entered the 9 dragons' true qi and hacked down on Yi Futian's body. Just then, a streak of sword light lit up in the sky. This streak of sword light seemed to have come from outside the heavens. It passed through time and space, directly cutting apart the constraints that the Revelation Divine Domain put on the divine power. It entered the 9 dragons' true qi and hacked down on Yi Futian's body. Poof poof. There were sharp grating sounds, and then Yi Futian's body vanished from his spot. He retreated to the distance. The defenses from the divine power of the world on his body were sliced apart, and a bloody gash appeared on his body under the beam of sword qi. The bloody gash started healing, but the gash contained extremely frightening sword qi. It seemed to be not so easy to scatter. The divine power of vitality in Yi Futian's body flooded madly to the injury to heal it. Raising his head, Yi Futian looked into the distance. There was a middle-aged man in dark clothing. Merely standing there, he gave off an extremely sharp feeling. Sword qi flowed all around him, as if he was the ruler of that area of the sky. As sword will flowed across his body, the swordsmen of the entire heavenly imperial city felt the sword will within their bodies go out of control. It was like they wanted to submit to this gust of sword will. They all looked to the sky in horror. That figure in the heavens was like the master of the swords of all heavens. Eternal Sword Lord, Dong Huang the Great stared at the figure that had appeared and thought of another super being from the era, before the heavenly path had collapsed. The Eternal Sword Lord had created the Eternal Sword Domain. He was skilled in the sword way of all heavens, and the sword domains that he created could last for eternity. He had been a supreme figure of the ancient sword way, and stood at the pinnacle. His level was above all of the gods and emperors he had killed before. This kind of being had not died under the world tribulations and returned today. He was also being used by the human ancestor. The Eternal Sword Lord's level was definitely above his back then. He had been one of the strongest figures in the world. One could imagine how threatening he was. Even though they knew that the human ancestor had helped the various gods return, and there would definitely be super great emperors, Dong Huang the Great had still underestimated them. He did not think that someone like the Eternal Sword Lord could return too. What did the human ancestor do exactly to let them return? Please keep reading on Wuxia World. The Eternal Sword Lord walked forward. His body was like a sword as if it was not made of flesh. His eyes contained immense sword will that could pierce someone. Being stared at by him made one feel the endless sword will attacking. Did anyone in this era still remember him? Back then, he had been one of those who fought against the heavenly path. At the time of the world tribulations, his cultivation had been one of the top great emperors. He had been cared for by the world tribulations and died on the spot. His physical body had been destroyed, and his spiritual soul had shattered, transforming into an eternal beam of sword will in this world. However, he did not think that he would have the chance to return. Using this beam of eternal sword will, someone in this era helped him return. Even though he had not returned to the past and his abilities could not return to their peak, as long as he was back, anything was possible. A frightening sword domain appeared. It was the Eternal Sword Domain. In that instant, all of the heavens were enveloped by this sword domain. Futian and Dong Huang the Great were both within this sword domain. The Revelation Divine Matrix overlapped with it, but could not repress this sword domain. The Eternal Sword Domain contained endless sword will. They shot murderously towards Dong Huang the Great and Futian, tearing apart the void like countless sword rivers. Many of the surrounding great emperors saw the Eternal Sword Lord attack, so they just stood there to watch. The Eternal Sword Lord had been an aggressive and fearless being in their era, so killing two modern great emperors was naturally easy for him. Since the ancient emperors returned, they would naturally have to take back their era. These two modern great emperors dared to dream about swaying the heavens. Dong Huang the Great walked forward, but he heard Futian say, "Father, hand it to me." Hearing Futian's voice, Dong Huang the Great turned and glanced at him. Then he nodded slightly. His figure retreated to the back, and put up strong defenses around him, to fend off the invasion of the sword path power. Meanwhile, divine power seeped out of Futian's body, filling this vast space. In that moment, all of the great emperors felt a different kind of aura. Many things in this divine domain seemed to be the same, but it was also somehow different. Oh! The Eternal Sword Lord's brows furrowed. He sensed a different kind of law aura. The laws in Futian's divine domain were different. It was a law order that belonged to himself. But he only furrowed his brows. It was the same for him. The Eternal Sword Domain contained his own laws of the sword path. He waved his palm in the air. Instantly, many sword rivers fell from the dome of the sky. They contained limitless sword will. Those sword rivers were extremely aggressive, and made the great path roar. They wanted to rip apart the sky as they cut down at Futian. The people of the heavenly imperial city saw the aggressive divine swords fall down like the Milky Way. They all felt incredibly shocked. This kind of sword could destroy a world, but it was going for Futian at this moment. Divine light wrapped around Futian's body, as if he represented the law of the heavenly path. A similarly shocking sword materialized. 9 dragons' true chi wrapped around that divine sword and carved a word. The word was Emperor. This seemed to be the most noble sword in the world. Once this sword was out, everyone would bow down. This was the king of the swords. Sword of the Heavenly Emperor. The Eternal Sword Lord was surprised when he saw Yi Futian's sword. This sword was like the sword of the Heavenly Emperor from the Deva. It was the sword that governed the universe. Boom! Divine light flashed. The sword of the Heavenly Emperor had been created by Yi Futian's power of the law of the heavenly path. Carrying ultimate divine power, it crashed against the divine sword of the Eternal Sword Lord. Instantly, a gust of destructive force swept through the skies. The horrible sword will rip through all beings. The divine domain of the great path and the surrounding defenses were all ripped apart. Strong light pierced their eyes. Before the people of the heavenly imperial city could process everything, they saw the various gods transform into beams of light and disappear. In the blink of an eye, everyone had disappeared. Huh? What happened? The people of the heavenly imperial city felt their hearts pound without stop. The destructive storm of sword chi was still there, but the various gods had transformed into beams of light and left the heavenly imperial city. That sword was enough to destroy the entire heavenly imperial city. If the heavenly emperor had not blocked that sword, we all would have died, someone said, feeling belated fear. The others all felt chills down their spine after hearing that. Earlier, that sword had fallen down like the Milky Way. If it had come down, the sword will landing on the heavenly imperial city. Then, the entire city would probably be obliterated directly by the sword will. How could they survive with their cultivation planes? Will anything happen to the Heavenly Emperor? Someone asked. Heavenly Emperor Yi has been cultivating in seclusion all this time, and combined with the heavenly path. His abilities have already evolved, and can't be compared to how he had been. He can directly take the other sword, so you can imagine how strong he is. He would not stay to fight if he is not confident, someone said. The Heavenly Emperor is working with Donghuang the Great. Even if they cannot defeat the gods, surely they can retreat safely. All the strong figures nodded, and they gazed into the heavens. At that moment, they actually felt a sense of belonging. In the battle between the old and new gods, who would become the legitimate rulers of the world. A group of strong cultivators at the Tianshan level passed through the vast void with extreme speed. They even went through the space passageway and entered the original realm. A group of strong cultivators at the Tianshan level passed through the vast void with extreme speed. They even went through the space passageway and entered the original realm. Yi Futian and Donghuang the Great were at the front. They seemed to have transformed into two spots of light. Yi Futian transformed into a beam of light, streaking through the endless starry sky. The Eternal Sword Lord was tight on his heels. He advanced in the form of a sword, and was also extremely fast. Just then, the Eternal Sword Lord's entire body dazzled like a heaven-slaying divine sword. He raised his finger and pointed at the sky. The upper heavens instantly started changing and transforming. Cut! The instant he waved his hand, it was like the Milky Way fell from the heavens. The sword was like the sword of time and space. It surpassed time and space, cutting down at Yi Futian and Donghuang the Great. It set out later but arrived first. Even though Yi Futian and Donghuang the Great were streaking through space at a frightening speed, they were still in the range of the sword path's attacks. The two both felt a powerful gust of sword will. Yi Futian and Donghuang the Great both released divine power from their bodies. The revelation divine domain covered the vast void, causing the sword to be obstructed a little, but it still could not stop this sword that surpassed time and space. The sword will continue to shoot down murderously. However, at the same time, Yi Futian also released his divine domain of the Great Path. With his body as the center, it transformed into a world. When the sword will cut down, time and space became chaotic, affecting that sword. But despite this, that sword still did not change its direction. It cut down directly at them. One could imagine just how terrifying this sword was. It could tear apart the laws of his divine domain. In a certain way, it indeed surpassed the laws of time and space. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. This sword cut a beautiful sword arc in the vast space, splitting the void into halves. It transformed into a sword river with unparalleled power and might. Yi Futian looked up at that sword, and then he waved the sword in his hand. Under the eyes of all the Tianshan, Yi Futian sent out 81 swords instantly. Every sword was an extremely aggressive sword. They were also complete swords. How can he be so fast? Those great emperors had a misperception, as if they were in a different dimension as Yi Futian. The Eternal Swordlord's sword was so fast. His sword speed was definitely one of the fastest swords in the entire world. But in that instant, they vaguely sensed that the sword had slowed down. Or perhaps it was not the Eternal Swordlord's sword that had slowed down, but that Yi Futian had more time. The law of time. Everyone's heart shuddered. Yi Futian had used the advantage of the law of time to change the flow of time. This allowed him to have more time, and thus sent out the 81 swords instantly. 81 beams of sword will crashed against the Milky Way sword that surpassed time and space. Sword chi shot out millions of miles. Even stars in the distance were ripped apart by the sword will. At the same time, Yi Futian's divine domain of the Great Path expanded, and his divine power enveloped all the gods. Those Tianshan who had pursued him felt that they were covered by Yi Futian's divine domain of the Great Path now. They all released their own law's rule power at the same moment. The vast space was instantly filled with extremely chaotic and aggressive divine power. Boom! There was a horrifying boom. An extremely huge figure appeared in the sky like the King of the Void. It was the human ancestor's figure, enveloped by the turbid divine thunder in this area, and accompanied by beams of falling divine light. Frightening chaos true thunder swords rained down, shooting directly at Yi Futian and Donghuang the Great. The Eternal Sword Lord was strong enough, but the human ancestor did not want to keep waiting. Yi Futian had already developed to an extremely frightening step. After combining with that heavenly path, his abilities were even comparable to the present 6 emperors. Wham! Yi Futian's figure streaked through the void directly. The chaos true thunder swords raining down actually could not capture his figure. Another great emperor attacked, and the space of this boundless world seemed to solidify suddenly. Everything stopped moving. A super great emperor released his own great path divine domain. Under that restrictive force, Yi Futian's figure was revealed. A chaos true thunder sword shot down, blasting directly at his body. It had locked onto him. Yi Futian released the divine power around him to the max. The divine power sealing off the space was ripped apart. He pointed to the sky, and the extremely domineering Heavenly Emperor sword crashed against the Chaos True Thunder sword. They were both extremely rigid and powerful, incomparably domineering attacks. The Heavenly Emperor sword that Yi Futian had released was the Heavenly Emperor sword that contained his divine power. The human ancestor watched as the Heavenly Emperor sword and Chaos True Thunder sword shattered. This put a surprised expression on him. His Chaos True Thunder sword was one of the greatest attacks in the world, but it was only comparable to Yi Futian's Heavenly Emperor sword. The divine power contained in the Heavenly Emperor sword seemed to destroy everything. Even the Chaos True Thunder was destroyed. It seemed that the son of Donghuang had reached a frightening level after these years of growth. Clang! The ringing of bells suddenly sounded in the sky. The ringing was very long and stretched far. Its reverberations shattered the space, causing the divine power that froze the space to collapse and shatter. The various gods all looked at Yi Futian and saw many ancient bronze bells surrounding his body. These ancient bells all contained peerless divine power. The beams of divine light rained down from the ancient bells, causing everything to get destroyed and the space to be pulverized. Yi Futian's power made the gods too scared to separate. When great emperors fought, one person could stand their ground. There was actually a great distance between them and Yi Futian, but these great emperors did not dare to be too scattered. They were worried that Yi Futian would kill a great emperor with one strike like earlier. The ancient bronze bells revolved endlessly, and divine light swept around. The divine power that froze the space continuously shattered. Every divine bell radiated the force of destruction. Are his combat abilities really that strong? The various Tianshan stared at Yi Futian. This junior great emperor of the modern ages was actually this strong. He threatened these ancient emperors, even in this situation, where they were attacking together. If they had come alone to kill Yi Futian, probably very few of them could fight against Yi Futian alone. Even Donghuang the Great was a bit surprised. He looked at the white-haired figure before him, and there was a pleased look in his eyes. He seemed to see her shadow. Before, he had exchanged simple blows with Yi Futian, and knew that the present Yi Futian was no longer below his level. Thus these two dared to face these gods. It was a powerful kind of confidence. But even so, he discovered that he had still underestimated Yi Futian. He was even more extraordinary than he'd imagined. Thus, Donghuang the Great did not help Yi Futian right now. He wanted to see what level Yi Futian was at. Universe-breaking bell. The human ancestor looked at Yi Futian's body. The universe-breaking bell was still the ability of the heavenly emperor. It could shatter the void, but in the hands of Yi Futian, this universe-breaking bell perfectly fused with the law divine power that Yi Futian was skilled at. Its force was shockingly strong and directly tore apart the divine power that froze the space. All the ancient bells spun while revolving around the world. The divine light that dropped down was filled with extremely destructive divine power. All the ancient bells spun while revolving around the world. The divine light that dropped down was filled with extremely destructive divine power. Clang! The overlapping ringing was endlessly heard. The universe-breaking bells directly broke open the void as it advanced, transforming into beautiful beams of light that shot at the gods. Every bell was boundlessly huge, and could shatter a portion of the sky. Seeing that Yi Futian could still have the ability to attack the other great emperors while under their siege, the eternal sword lord furrowed his brows too. He took a step forward and waved his sword. Sword chi shot out for millions of miles and shattered the void, cutting arcs of endless darkness. It shattered divine power, ripped the space, and went to kill Yi Futian despite the difference in time and space. This sword stretched millions of miles in all directions. When it cut down, a flash of sword light appeared in the vast starry sky. All the space in its path was broken and cracked apart. In one instant, the world was about to be ripped apart. In ancient times, the eternal sword lord could split apart a star planet with one sword and defeat all the beings. Even though his abilities were not at his peak now, his sword was still frighteningly powerful. A silver spear made of divine power somehow appeared in Yi Futian's hands. The instant that the sword fell, the spear attacked the incoming sword like a dragon, fast as the speed of light. The void collapsed instantly, and a world-ending storm swept across the air. However, that sword kept cracking until it scattered in the void. But at almost the same time, many Chaos True Thunder swords attacked simultaneously, stabbing Yi Futian's body. They arrived right after that sword. Yi Futian's spear swept across, and then attacked the Chaos True Thunder sword in the sky. The destructive windstorm shot down murderously, forcing his body to keep falling down the sky. However, the Chaos True Thunder sword still could not hurt Yi Futian. Bang bang bang. There was a continuous stream of sounds. It was emitted by Yi Futian's universe-breaking bell, when it crashed against the various gods. The dozen great emperors had difficulty enduring the might of the universe-breaking bell. They were hurt by the reverberations and retreated. Some of them even suffered heavy injuries. Their physical bodies almost collapsed from the universe-breaking bell's hits. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU at the same time, the Eternal Sword domain enveloped the vast space. With one thought from the Eternal Sword Lord, countless divine swords streamed down instantly, going murderously toward Yi Futian. Each sword contained shocking divine might that could kill a Tianshan. Yi Futian looked up with a glance. 9 dragons' true chi wrapped around his body, and the silhouette of the heavenly emperor appeared. He was peerless. With his body as the center, rounds of world particle defenses appeared. They transformed into a light screen that blocked the incoming sword's path. But the Eternal Sword Lord's sword path was also the law power of the sword path that he controlled. The destructive divine sword penetrated the world particle defense directly and zoomed at Yi Futian's body. The time and space before Yi Futian were distorted, causing some weaker sword will to be buried in the chaotic space. However, some super strong swords still passed through the layers of obstacles and shattered the chaotic currents of time and space. The sword path contained the power to rip apart the space, causing the various divine swords to reach Yi Futian's body. But just then, it was like Yi Futian had created the heavenly emperor divine body. Many runes wrapped around the emperor's silhouette. It flashed with golden light, like an undying battle form. The divine sword shot over, and produced an intense crashing noise, shaking Yi Futian's body. However, it could not continue advancing. Clearly, it was impossible to sway Yi Futian, only by using the sword will of the sword domain. Yi Futian's combat ability was not any weaker than the eternal sword lord. Kaboom! Just then, there was a horrifying explosion in the sky. They saw the world collapse and shatter. Everything was about to be destroyed. Yi Futian looked up, and saw the human ancestor's huge palm print crushed down. It was like there was a world hidden in the palm. The frightening chaos true thunder was hidden inside. Carrying the supreme destructive force, it crushed the space. Everything in its path was obliterated. This horrifying palm seal blocked off the sky. It was boundlessly huge, covering the vast void. Yi Futian and Donghuang the Great's bodies were both shrouded by it. It crushed everything and grappled at Yi Futian and Donghuang the Great's space. There was a muffled sound. It was like everything was going to be destroyed under this palm seal. The human ancestor had transformed into the ruler of this world, or the high and mighty god that controlled the fates of all beings. Donghuang the Great also looked toward that horrifyingly destructive palm seal, and his brows furrowed. Then he saw that Yi Futian's entire body dazzled with divine light. The beautiful glow contained supreme crushing force, as if he would shatter that supreme palm seal squarely. Boom! Yi Futian's body advanced as the path. He held the Tianshan spear in his hands, and the divine power in his body flooded crazily into the spear. He stabbed into the heavens, and instantly, the destructive chaotic true thunder that could shatter everything ended up getting broken instead. A huge boom spread. Yi Futian's spear blasted onto that boundlessly huge giant palm of Tianshan. It was like a person striking a small, destructive world. He seemed extremely small in comparison, like a moth trying to sway a tree. However, Yi Futian really did sway that boundlessly huge palm. The spear ripped everything, passing through the chaotic true thunder, and distorting the space. The world of chaotic true thunder was swallowed into the storm of time and space. Meanwhile, the spear continued up with its supreme destructive force. It stabbed into the palm seal that covered the vast void and penetrated it directly, burying inside murderously. That boundless giant palm shook violently, and many cracks appeared. Boom! Yi Futian's body passed through the space above the palm seal. He broke through directly, and did not stop. After passing through the destructive palm seal, he went directly for the human ancestor with extreme speed. It was like he had arrived before the majestic and huge body of the human ancestor in an instant. Chaotic true thunder shot out of the human ancestor's eyes. It tore apart the void directly and blasted toward Yi Futian. But this time, Yi Futian was completely confident. He did not dodge at all. His spear broke through the air. It was unstoppable. He stabbed through the chaotic true thunder directly, and went for that huge figure. The world-slaying chaotic true thunder covered Yi Futian's entire body. The destructive attack destroyed his physical body, but he streaked through it. Boom! Just then, Yi Futian felt that he saw an illusory figure. It was majestic and unparalleled. It was like the divine king that ruled the entire universe. Bang! The spear hit the huge skull and penetrated it. But at the same time, a burst of horrifyingly destructive divine power snaked into Yi Futian's mind. The silhouette of that divine king became clearer. It terrorized all beings in the world, and wanted him to bow down before it. In that extremely short instant, the spear already shattered the divine human's skull. Yi Futian's body passed through it, but he did not feel excited. Instead, he had a strong sense of fear. He looked back at the divine human's body, and saw that the shattered skull was reforming. It was not affected at all, as if it was an undying body. A clone. That moment, Yi Futian's heart tremored violently. This was just an outer clone of the human ancestor, and not his true self. Yi Futian finally understood what his father had said to him before. The human ancestor was not the real human ancestor. Yi Futian finally understood what his father had said to him before. The human ancestor was not the real human ancestor. Now he could vaguely sense that it was highly possible that the human ancestor that he was facing now was only a clone of the human ancestor. The human ancestor that had survived since the era of the heavenly path's collapse had been cultivating every moment of these countless years. He had even collected countless great emperor relics from when the heavenly path had collapsed, and found the traces of the gods in this world. How could he not be powerful? Was the force that he had felt earlier the force brought on by the human ancestor's true consciousness? Then the human ancestor turned and looked toward him. Destructive light shot out of his eyes. Using a thought, Yi Futian's body disappeared from the spot and appeared before Dong Huang the Great. "Father, let's go," he said. Since the human ancestor was just a clone and had an undying body, it meant that this battle had no meaning anymore. They could not kill the enemy, and in that battle, he had also made risky actions. This was an extremely unbalanced battle. The two transformed into two beams of light and shot into the distance, instantly vanishing from the spot. But a Tianshan used their mind, and the vast world was instantly frozen. The space was locked, and everything here seemed to fall into a still state. But Yi Futian was in his own divine domain. Divine power exploded, and he transformed into a spot of light, streaking through the space. The power of the sealed void could not stop his departure. The two instantly streaked into the distance. The Eternal Sword Lord looked at the escaping figures and cut down with his sword remotely. The sword crossed the space to kill them. It crumbled the vast void. All the stars in its path shattered and collapsed, getting sliced apart directly. The sword path Milky Way dropped down, and it was like one could not escape this attack no matter how they ran. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. But then the two beams of light that were Yi Futian and Dong Huang the Great passed directly through the sword path Milky Way. They streaked forward, passing through, and then continued to escape until they disappeared. The two were figures at the top of the pyramid. Clearly, it was quite unlikely for them to be stopped by this one sword. The group of Tianshan did not pursue them. The gods realized that the vast majority of them might not be able to withstand Yi Futian's attack. They might even get killed instantly, so they definitely could not leave the group to chase after them. The human ancestor did not pursue them either. He stared at the escaping figures and realized that even this Tianshan army could not make the two stay completely. Yi Futian's abilities were not any weaker than Dong Huang the Great now. All the people in the micro-heavenly path would be able to transform. Yes. Yi Futian nodded. He was worried about the situation outside too. Now the human ancestor led the strong figures of the three realms to invade. The beings would all suffer greatly, even though reached a consensus for the cultivators of the heaven realm, divine prefecture, and western heaven world, to try not to participate in the battle directly. They still could not avoid the killing and fighting. This was an invasion. The invaders would not be kind. It would be accompanied by fresh blood and white bones. But even so, he was the only one who could change the situation of this battle, and he had to hurry and cultivate to improve himself right now. "Let us separate here," Dong Huang the Great said. "Father, be careful," Yi Futian said a bit seriously. This time, the enemies that they faced were too strong. Otherwise, with Dong Huang the Great's abilities, he did not need Yi Futian's worry at all. This time was different. The gods of ancient times were all their enemies. "Don't worry. I will be careful and avoid battles. You cultivate at peace," Dong Huang the Great said. "This time, I have no choice but to abandon the Heaven Palace and Dong Huang Imperial Palace. It is a humiliation. All of this is waiting for you to take back. I will leave now." With that, he turned and walked forward, leaving with extreme decisiveness. He left Yi Futian alone in the vast void. Of course, all the cultivators of the 99 heavens were in his micro-heavenly path world. He did not need to cultivate himself. He also had to help them become stronger. Yi Futian's body flashed, going toward a specific direction. A moment later he saw a barren star. With a thought, Yi Futian's body appeared on that barren star. Then he went directly to a barren mountain on that barren star and sat down. He closed his eyes to cultivate, starting his seclusion. One day in the outside world was 81 days in his micro-world. He had to grasp the advantage of time. 3 months later, on the barren star, Yi Futian sat cross-legged while divine light flowed, enveloping the entire star. 3 months later, on the barren star, Yi Futian sat cross-legged while divine light flowed, enveloping the entire star. He was like an ancient god, sitting there alone as he cultivated in seclusion. Right now, time was flowing at 81 times the speed in Yi Futian's micro-heavenly path world. 3 months was essentially 20 years. 20 years was enough for many people to transform. Furthermore, Yi Futian controlled the heavenly law. He could create strong cultivators directly, helping the people inside to speed up their cultivation. The cultivators in Yi Futian's micro-heavenly path world now were the first batch of cultivators. In a way, they were the direct heirs, other than some specific figures. Now the micro-heavenly path world had been split into 6 camps. They were the 6 legions of the micro-heavenly path world. These 6 legions were the New Heaven Court, the original forces of the Heaven Realm. It was led by Lady Qin and Lady Shu, and the people who had joined the Heavenly Imperial Palace. The 2 great emperors Qin and Shu, and the top figures of the original Heavenly Palace marshaled this legion. The Revelation Legion led by Donghuang Diyuan was the force of the original Divine Prefecture. 4 Corners Legion led by the force of 4 Corners Village and cultivators who had joined the Heaven Realm. They were trained by Fang Xiyuan's 4-person group and transformed into a complete entity. It was a relatively new legion. Arhat Legion was a Buddhist legion led by the various Buddhas. There were not many people in this legion, but there were all strong cultivators of the elite level, high monks of the Buddhist clan. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU Ziwei Legion consisted of the old members of the Ziwei Imperial Palace. Heavenly Mandate Legion was an old force led by the Heavenly Mandate Academy. The Ziwei Legion and Heavenly Mandate Legion had split up the original Ziwei Imperial Palace. Back in the day, the Ziwei Imperial Palace had established various palaces, thus creating Ziwei and Heavenly Mandate. But after reorganizing this force now, the West Imperial Palace was put into the Ziwei Legion, while the Lost Clan was put into the Heavenly Mandate Legion. The 6 great legions were then split into smaller legions and controlled by different people. This kind of reorganization was also in response to the recent changes in the world. It was a war between the 6 realms, and there were many cultivators in the micro-heavenly path world now. They had all come from different forces and clans. If they were not reorganized, they would be like scattered sand. Thus, they had to be newly organized to face the war. A figure stood in the starry sky. It was Yi Tuesday. The 6 legions cultivated in different locations. They all had their territory. He felt like he saw the 8 legions under the former heavenly path. When Yi Futian ruled the world, these forces would be his 8 legions in the future. The devil world would probably come under him too. This was the situation that Yi Tu hoped to see one day. However, everything was still unknown right now. He did not know if he could see the day arrive. In another direction, Yi Futian saw that everyone was cultivating orderly, and his consciousness left this place. Yi Futian took out a sorcery item in the outside world and transmitted his consciousness into it. "Father," he said, "how is the outside world now?" He had cultivated for 20 years, but it had only been 3 months in the outside world. However, even though it had only been 3 months, dramatic changes could have occurred. The war has spread everywhere in the 6 realms. Among them, the Heaven Realm's resistance was the weakest. The Divine Prefecture's territory is extremely vast, and there are many cultivators. People everywhere are resisting. The Western Heaven Buddhist resistance is the most intense. The Buddhist clan is a Pure Land. After being invaded by the Dark World, the Buddhists believed their Pure Land had been tainted, so they started a mighty realm war. They pushed back against the Dark World, and the battle was incredibly intense, Donghuang the Great answered. In addition, the human realm seems to be letting this happen purposely. They did not send any support, causing the cultivators of the Dark World to suffer great losses. The Heaven Realm had fallen for a long while, and they did not have much sense of belonging. Their forces were also relatively weak. Naturally, they would not start large-scale resistance. This was also Yi Futian's wish. There was no need to make meaningless sacrifices. The human ancestor's goal is to unify the world. Why would he care about the cultivators of the Dark World? Since the Dark Court decided to participate, Then they should pay the cost, Yi Futian said. Anything with the devil world? No, Donghuang the Great replied. Nowadays, the devil world has become the only pure land. They're cultivating in peace. I'm afraid the devil world can't stay unaffected either. The human realm wants to conquer the 7 realms. After taking down the 6 realms, they will probably take over the original realm, and then invade the devil world, Yi Futian said. However, Yu Sheng also needed time to cultivate now. He had sent over a sorcery item that could change the flow of time. This way, he could also help Yu Sheng gain more time to cultivate and improve himself. Thus, he was quite happy to see the current situation. He would wait for Yu Sheng to become stronger. The divine prefecture must have been damaged greatly, right? Yi Futian asked. Donghuang the Great was quiet for a bit. Then he said, You just focus on cultivating. I'm afraid the day that the human ancestor returns is not far away. Yi Futian understood what he meant. The divine prefecture must have been significantly damaged. This was an invasive war. Even if they avoided battle, they would still be affected by it. Plus, the initiative was completely in the hands of the other side. However, Donghuang the Great did not want Yi Futian to get involved. They were both clear that Yi Futian's cultivation concerned the entire world. If no one could stop the human ancestor when he returned, then the world would be under the rule of the human realm. I understand, Yi Futian answered. He did not speak further. He looked up at the empty starry sky and then stood up. With a thought, his body vanished from the spot. Even though his father Donghuang the Great had told him to cultivate in peace, he still wanted to see the situation in the outside world. His father did not tell him everything, fearing he would get worried about the present situation. In the divine prefecture, all of the 18 domains were covered by the fires of war. Strong cultivators of the empty divine realm and human realm had invaded everywhere. There had not been much resistance in the war of the heaven realm. After the human realm figures invaded it, they quickly conquered everywhere in the heaven realm. Now they were in the ending stages. Thus, after battles died down in the heaven realm, most of the vital figures of the human realm turned to the divine prefecture. They began to attack the 18 domains of the divine prefecture. The divine prefecture had countless cultivation continents. Each of the 18 domains were extremely large. Thus, the human realm and empty divine realm targeted the main continents of the 18 domains. After they took over the core continent, they could fan out to control the entire territory. The Taishang domain had been one of the strongest of the 18 domains. Now it was also war-ridden. Many battles had erupted on it. Not long ago, there had been an extremely bloody event in the Zixiao domain of the divine prefecture. After that event, the 18 domains of the divine prefecture had started extremely big resistances. People from all the domains stood up and started hunting down the invaders. In the process of the human realm and empty divine realm's invasion, cultivators of many forces started looting madly. They encountered intense resistance from cultivators during the looting and started slaughtering indiscriminately. This caused an entire city to be filled with rivers of blood. This event had shaken the 18 domains of the divine prefecture and completely infuriated the independent cultivators of the divine prefecture. Yi Futian's figure descended upon a continent in the Taiyu domain. Using his consciousness, countless images appeared in his mind instantly. His divine consciousness covered the entire vast continent. Yi Futian's figure descended upon a continent in the Taiyu domain. Using his consciousness, countless images appeared in his mind instantly. His divine consciousness covered the entire vast continent. He saw many battlefields. Battle had erupted everywhere and fires burned. According to the rules established by convention, great emperors were not allowed to be involved in the battles. To avoid affecting the innocent people of the divine prefecture, Yi Futian naturally would not directly interfere with this battle. However, this did not mean that he could use any secret methods. Yi Futian could sense that there were many demon beasts with strong cultivations. He used one thought, and a strong demonic cultivator appeared before him. This was the golden-winged giant Peng bird. His entire body was golden, but he was in human form. His features were extremely sharp. He was a divine bird, the golden-winged giant Peng bird, from the empty divine realm. Whoosh! There was a gale of wind. The golden-winged giant Peng bird transformed into a bolt of lightning, flashing toward Futian. He extended his hand. It changed into extremely sharp claws as he clapped down on Futian. This was the other actively attacking him. Futian looked at him with his dark eyes. Instantly, that figure felt a horrible divine consciousness penetrate his mind directly. The next moment his body came to an abrupt stop. He looked at Futian and bowed in greeting. Master. Futian extracted his memories directly and quickly learned about some things. His brows furrowed slightly, and murderous intent flashed past his eyes. Go, he uttered. Instantly, that figure shot into the clouds and transformed back into its original form. He streaked through the sky and left this place to collect information from the Divine Prefecture for Futian. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. Futian took a step and went before another demon beast. After doing this many times, he controlled quite a few demon beasts and sent them towards the main continents of the Divine Prefecture. After doing this, Futian's figure appeared at one of the main peaks of the continent. He had received a lot of information in his mind. As expected, father did not tell me this, Futian thought inside. Dong Huang the Great had hidden a lot of information in the conversation with him earlier. The Divine Prefecture's situation was much worse than he had imagined. Naturally, he understood his father's actions. The Divine Prefecture was the territory that his father ruled. How would he be willing to see today's situation? But for the future, he had to hope that Futian could focus entirely on cultivating, and thus did not tell him too much. The Orthodox unity was powerful because of the tight-knit relationship with human divine palace. They had branches everywhere, and their forces were spread throughout the human realm. They were the #1 cultivation force in the human realm, other than the human divine palace. There was no other one. One could imagine how strong they were. Now the sect leader of the Orthodox unity followed the human ancestor, while the vice-sect leaders managed the sect. They were all in the near-deity level, and had very frightening cultivations. Right now, they stood in the air, leading the Orthodox Unity Legion. They were ready to invade the city of the Taishang domain. The vice-sect leaders of the Orthodox Unity all had an air of justice about them. Divine light flowed on their bodies, and they had extraordinary auras. Their gazes scanned the city below. Other than the Orthodox Unity, they also led many forces from the Taishang domain to attack together. They prepared to take down this city in one fell swoop, and then take down the Taishang domain. There was a similarly mighty legion in the Taishang city. This was a voluntary resistance army, formed by the cultivators of the Divine Prefecture Taishang city. In addition, there were many scattered camps inside the entire city. They were all resistors. Right now, they all looked up at the army that had come to conquer them, and felt very formidable pressure. Even so, they were still full of the wish to fight. The human realm's invasion had upended the impression of the human ancestor that the people of the Divine Prefecture had before. These self-proclaimed cultivators of justice were all shams. Dong Huang the Great might have seen through the other's disguise long ago, and thus rejected Di Hao's marriage proposal so decisively back then. They finally understood why the human ancestor had told Di Hao to propose to Dong Huang Diyuan, and why the great emperor had become furious and humiliated Di Hao. The two had an intense rivalry. It seems that they don't plan on giving up. They prepare to continue resisting. A cultivator of the Orthodox Unity in the Sky said, after seeing the scene in Taishang City. A group of idiots. Mayflies trying to sway a tree. Someone on the side mocked. He announced, Dong Huang has already abandoned you all, and you still dare to fight back. You're looking for death. The cultivators of Taishang City were not swayed at all by these words. Had Dong Huang the Great abandoned them? Dong Huang the Great told them to save themselves, try their best not to get into the war, and wait for the future. They understood how helpless this was. The great emperor probably did not think that the human realm cultivators, who are self-proclaimed people of justice, will be so bloodthirsty. Someone said coldly. The great emperor will not forgive the invaders. Really? The Orthodox Unity cultivator in the Sky sneered. Since you're so stubborn, then you can only be baptized in blood. The vice-sect leader of the Orthodox Unity looked down from the sky, as if he was looking at a group of ants. The strong figures of the Orthodox Unity and human realm listen, he announced. The cultivators of Taishang City are killing the masters of justice. In that case, we must bathe Taishang City in blood and kill all with no mercy. The vice-sect leader of the Orthodox Unity looked down from the sky, as if he was looking at a group of ants. The strong figures of the Orthodox Unity and human realm listen, he announced. The cultivators of Taishang City are killing the masters of justice. In that case, we must bathe Taishang City in blood and kill all with no mercy. The strong figures of the Orthodox Unity had icy gazes, while the murderous intent burned. That one massacre had not been enough. Instead, it united the people of the Divine Prefecture in resistance. Then they would do another massacre to repress them and clean everyone out. They would kill until the people of the Divine Prefecture gave up on resisting. As soon as he spoke, a frightening aura pressed down, shrouding Taishang City. The mighty masses of strong cultivators flooded down to start the bloodshed in the city, turning the wrong into right. The strong figures of the Divine Prefecture had icy gazes. They carry fatal weapons and murder grows in their hearts. The human realm and empty divine realm are invading. Even if they had consciences before, this kind of environment will destroy your humanity, an elder stated loudly. Cultivators of the Divine Prefecture, toss away your fantasies. Kill to stop killing. Those from another sect will have different hearts. If I surrender and die with injustice, then I'd rather die on the battlefield. Even if I die, I'll have no regrets. The voices rose in waves. They all had the feeling of tragic heroes, and stimulated the resistance spirit of the cultivators in Taishang City. All the cultivators released their powers, and their bodies shot into the air, ready to face the Orthodox Unity's attack. Beams of destructive attacks have already descended from the dome of the sky. The cultivators of Taishang City also attacked. Instantly, there was a frighteningly destructive storm in the sky above the city. Kill! Please keep reading on Wuxia World. The yell of kill shook the sky on the battlefield. Led by the Orthodox Unity, the strong figures charged into the city like a ferocious tiger coming down the mountain. The alliance of independent cultivators of the Divine Prefecture had difficulty resisting quickly. In a short time, many people died. This kind of battle was extremely destructive. At that time, countless legions suddenly appeared in different directions of the sky above Taishang City. Pressure weighed down. They all looked down at the same time. The aura of each legion was frightening. They were all cultivators with very high cultivations. The leaders were all at the near deity level, and there were quite a few of them. Who are you? The strong figures of the Orthodox Unity overlooked the battlefield. When they saw the army that had suddenly appeared in the sky, they froze. Their eyes narrowed slightly as they stared at these strong figures. As soon as they spoke, a group of strong figures charged directly at them. Countless beams of sword light appeared in the sky. Like a sword matrix, they tore apart the void and covered the area that they were in. The Imperial Palace Legion. They quickly realized who the newcomers were, and they paled. Even though the Orthodox Unity was strong, they were not the force directly under the Divine Human Palace. The top legion of the Seven Realms was directly under the Imperial Palace. These cultivators that had arrived were the legion directly under the Donghuang Imperial Palace and Heaven Imperial Palace, who had escaped earlier. Now they had killed their way here. Boom! A strong aura was released. The air of justice bloomed from their bodies as they cut down with mighty sword chi. But they were flooded instantly. Destructive sword intent directly ripped apart the void, disappearing in a flash. In that instant, the strong cultivators of the Orthodox Unity transformed instantly into nothingness. They were destroyed in this world, causing the strong figures of the human realm and empty divine realm below them to panic. They did not think they would get besieged by the Imperial Palace Legion here. Retreat! The strong figures of the Orthodox Unity were decisive and ordered to retreat. However, the entire Taishang City was covered by all the legions. Every direction was blocked off. Kill with no mercy. A voice rang through the air above Taishang City. The strong figures had said this of the Orthodox unity before too. Die! Instantly, the murderous yells from the entire Taishang city shook the sky. The strong figures from the legion that had arrived in Taishang city sealed the entire city and started killing. The people of the Orthodox unity, human realm, and empty divine realm did not want to fight anymore. They only wanted to kill enough to escape, while also calling for reinforcement. But it was utterly useless. This was a one-sided massacre. The people of the Orthodox unity wanted to wipe out Taishang city, but instead, they suffered a tragic massacre. Not too long after, the number of cultivators on the battlefield had been reduced greatly. Some of the Orthodox unity wanted to surrender, but the people of Taishang city did not accept it. Faced with these murderers, they only had murderous thoughts. Gradually, the battle entered the finishing stage. The strong figures of all the legions went toward the upper sky, starting to take their leave. Futian and the others appeared there, and enveloped the strong legions. Then they all vanished. Heavenly Emperor, take us with too. The strong figures of Taishang city, who had participated in the battle said at this time. We're willing to go with the Heavenly Emperor, more strong figures said. They were cultivators of the divine prefecture. The relationship between Donghuang the Great and Futian was public knowledge now. It was no longer a secret. There was no difference between following Futian and Donghuang the Great. Okay, those who are willing to fight, come with me, Futian said. Instantly, most of the people who had fought earlier in Taishang city shot into the sky, joining Futian. They were also collected into Futian's micro-heavenly path world. These people could join Donghuang Diyuan's Revelation Legion and be governed by Donghuang Diyuan. They would still be part of the Divine Prefecture's force in the future. When Futian was leaving, he ran into Donghuang the Great, who had hurried over. He had come to Taishang city after learning about the battle here. You came after all, Donghuang the Great said, sighing inwardly. He was conflicted inside too. He hoped Futian could focus on cultivating. But the situation in the Divine Prefecture now was indeed tragic. Yes, Father, come cultivate in my micro-world, Futian said. I'll take care of the matters in the outside world. Okay. Donghuang the Great nodded. He prepared to let go and hand everything over to Futian. He also entered Futian's micro-heavenly path world to cultivate. This way he could fight for more time. Futian left this place. The people of Taishang city looked at his receding silhouette, and it was like seeing the light in despair. The Heavenly Emperor and Donghuang the Great would win the War of the Seven Realms. News about the Battle of Taishang city started spreading. The human ancestor and other strong figures learned of it immediately, but by the time they hurried over, Futian and the others had already left. Futian was able to lead a moving army. This was indeed very troublesome. No, the human ancestor said as if sensing something. Return to the human realm. As soon as he spoke, their bodies transformed into beams of light. They vanished from their spot and hurried toward the human realm, as if they had sensed something was amiss. The sect leader of the Orthodox unity was by the human ancestor's side. He seemed to understand what the human ancestor meant, and his expression turned uncomfortable. Did the human ancestor think that Futian would lead his army to attack the human realm? Futian did not have much time. If he attacked the human realm, where would he choose to be the target? The sect leader of the Orthodox unity's face paled instantly. A massacre had occurred in the Divine Prefecture. So if Futian wanted to intimidate the forces of the human realm, what would be the best solution? Exterminate the Orthodox unity. The Orthodox unity was the #1 clan of the human realm below the divine human palace. The Orthodox unity was the #1 clan of the human realm below the divine human palace. Their forces were spread throughout the human realm. Before the gods' ruins continent had appeared in the era of the 6 emperors, the Orthodox unity already had many near-deity figures. There were also descendants of ancient gods and had a great heritage, so it was extremely strong. The Orthodox unity had many branches on all the continents of the human realm, while the headquarters of the Orthodox unity ruled the main city, Orthodox Unity City. It was directly named by the Orthodox unity, So one could imagine how big the Orthodox Unity's influence was. Within the Orthodox Unity city were practically all from the Orthodox Unity. They controlled all the resources in this city. During this war, the Orthodox Unity had sent out a portion of cultivators to fight, but more people remained within the clan. However, the people who left mostly had high cultivation levels. Now the entire city was in a state of chaos. The inner circle of the Orthodox Unity was especially panicked. Not long ago, they received news that the Orthodox Unity figures who went to invade the Divine Prefecture had practically been wiped out and killed. It was not just that the Orthodox Unity had been greatly hurt. Instead, the upper-level figures had practically all been killed. One could imagine what kind of shock the Orthodox Unity was in now. At this moment, the entire Orthodox Unity was in a mess. Strong figures kept coming to and fro under the mighty clan doors. Many cultivators in the city were heading toward the Orthodox Unity too. They wanted to know if the news was accurate. This was like a bolt in the blue for the Orthodox Unity city, with great implications. They naturally wanted to know the definite answer. Even if they knew that it might be true, they still did not want to accept it. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU silence. Just then, a voice came from within the doors of the Orthodox Unity and spread throughout the inside and outside of the clan. At the same time, a powerful burst of the Emperor's might radiated out, shaking the hearts of countless cultivators. Great Emperor! Another great emperor has been born in the Orthodox Unity. At that moment, countless strong cultivators were shocked. They seemingly forgot about the panic from earlier. Was there a second great emperor in the Orthodox Unity now, other than the leader? If both emperors were in the Orthodox Unity, they were still the top clan below the human divine palace. Who could shake them? Go do your own thing, the voice said again. When the emperor's might emanated, it seemed to calm people down. The panicking hearts of all the strong cultivators gradually calmed down. Then they prepared to leave and mind their own business. Just then, a terrifying might suddenly came from the dome of the sky. The cultivators of the Orthodox Unity looked up to the sky. The sun was a bit blinding, and many people covered their eyes with their hands, but an even more brilliant divine light shone down. Then they saw a mighty heavenly army descend from the sky. At that moment, their hearts twitched fiercely. This was, within the Orthodox Unity, a strong figure in a dark Taoist robe appeared in the sky. His eyes were like a bolt of lightning penetrating the void as he gazed toward the army in the sky. Who has come? Emperor's might radiated from his body and enveloped the vast land. The aggressive emperor's might calmed the cultivators down quite a bit, especially the strong figures of the Orthodox Unity. Their clan had a great emperor. As soon as he spoke, a white-haired figure appeared. When the great emperor of the Orthodox Unity saw the other, his expression changed drastically. Futian used a thought to cover the vast space with the divine power of the Great Path. Time and space seemed to freeze. An extremely brilliant spear appeared above the great emperor's head. This spear shot down directly, passing through the void. Sensing the might of the spear, the Orthodox Unity great emperor's expression dropped, but he felt that time had stopped moving. His divine power wanted to break free, but he had just entered the great emperor plane. How could he fight against Futian? Their divine power was not at the same level at all. The spear shot down and directly penetrated the great emperor's body with a squelch. With a loud boom, it continued down and smashed a grand pavilion of the Orthodox Unity, pulverizing it. The brilliant spear was nailed into the ground, nailing that great emperor's body there in death. The shocking scene before their eyes made all the strong figures inside and outside of the Orthodox Unity to freeze. They had not processed it all yet. Right before their eyes, they had seen a great emperor that had just been created in the Orthodox Unity to be nailed to death in the Orthodox Unity. After that, the strong figures of the Orthodox Unity felt extreme pain in their hearts. They recognized the white-haired youth. It's Futian. The heavenly emperor Futian killed 7 great emperors with one spear, and was left unscathed from a battle with the human ancestor and eternal sword lord. He had led his great army to attack the Orthodox Unity. Had the strong figures who had wiped out the Orthodox Unity in the Divine Prefecture been Futian's army too? Everyone looked up at the mighty army in the sky whose might was weighing down on the Orthodox unity. Yi Futian's eyes were icy but burned with murderous intent. He waved his hand and ordered, "Kill!" Since the human realm's forces had committed massacres in the divine prefecture and heaven realm, then they would kill to stop the killing. He would like to see if the other invasive forces of the human realm still dared to commit bloodshed after he wiped out the Orthodox unity. After Yi Futian spoke, the army attacked, charging towards the Orthodox unity. The strong figures of the Orthodox unity looked at the great emperor, nailed to the ground with the spear. Even his divine soul and consciousness had been wiped out. They felt a wave of despair, as if even the wind blowing onto their bodies was frigid. Outside the Orthodox unity's doors, the cultivators of the city watched this scene from afar. Even though the Orthodox unity was the #1 clan of the human realm, they still could not hold up before the army of an imperial palace. The horrifying army destroyed the Orthodox unity with unstoppable force. The mighty clan was being destroyed without stop. Strong figures kept dying in the sky, and their bodies fell down. The hot sun blazed, but the cultivators of the Orthodox unity city all felt the bone-stabbing coldness. When a breeze blew by, they felt iciness stab into their souls. This battle did not actually last very long, but the inside of the Orthodox unity was covered by corpses. Fresh blood dyed the Orthodox unity red. Meanwhile, the crushed pavilion at the peak of the Orthodox unity was where the scene of the great emperor nailed by the spear was. It was shocking. The #1 clan of the human realm had gotten wiped out. In the distance, extremely strong and domineering emperors might seem to descend. The human ancestor's face appeared in the sky, blocking the sun and covering the entire world. Divine might descended. The human ancestor stared at Yi Futian and said, "Yi Futian, you're too presumptuous." Yi Futian looked up and scanned that face. He collected the grand army into his micro-world and gathered divine power around his body into an extremely horrifying spear. He raised a hand and slapped it forward. Instantly, the long spear shot directly into the sky, stabbing toward that huge face. Boom! The long spear attacked the heavens and a horrifying crack appeared. It swallowed up the sky, even twisting the face. One portion of the sky had cracked. Yi Futian looked up and scanned the sky, saying, "If the human realm's forces dare to commit atrocities in the divine prefecture again, they will end up like the Orthodox unity." With that, his body vanished directly. After Yi Futian left, dozens of great emperors appeared. They did not dare to come forward earlier, and just watched it all happen. Clearly they could not offend Yi Futian. A desolate feeling rose in the hearts of the cultivators of the Orthodox unity. It seemed that the human realm could not stay safe from this tribulation either. The human ancestors group felt it too. His eyes were frigid. Even though he did not care about the lives of Orthodox unity cultivators, the fact that Yi Futian had wiped out the Orthodox unity still embarrassed him. The human ancestors group felt it too. His eyes were frigid. Even though he did not care about the lives of Orthodox unity cultivators, the fact that Yi Futian had wiped out the Orthodox unity still embarrassed him. After all, on the surface, the Orthodox unity was the #1 clan of the human realm. But Yi Futian led an army to the human realm and wiped it out. A great emperor was nailed to death there. This was Yi Futian's message to intimidate the invaders from the human realm. Human ancestor, Yi Futian possesses the micro-world and can move the army with him. This way, he can appear on every battlefield, and it's incredibly disadvantageous to us. If we don't kill Yi Futian, then there will be endless threats, a great emperor said. His voice contained tragic fury. This great emperor, who had stepped out, was the leader of the Orthodox unity. His Orthodox unity had been wiped out. Among the people who had been killed were the descendants of his family. They had been massacred. Before this, his descendants had also died in the Battle of Taishang City, falling on the battlefield. Other than him, the rest of the Orthodox unity had been killed. The human ancestor glanced at him with indifferent eyes. These were undoubtedly useless words. Could he not realize that himself? However, they had not taken down Yi Futian and Donghuang the Great in the previous siege on Yi Futian. If the other purposely avoided a head-on fight, it would be almost impossible to kill Yi Futian. This was also why the other dared to be so fearless and presumptuous. It was the prime example of one being fearless because of his skills. Yi Futian had extremely high confidence in his abilities. There was probably no one in the world now who could take down Yi Futian alone. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. Yu the human ancestor looked at the super great emperors behind him and said, "In the future, the law of the heavenly path will be reconstructed. Everything will be reorganized, including how to become gods. Since you all returned, you should also contribute some strength. No need to hide or hold back." He knew that these ancient great emperors had their statuses and were extremely arrogant and lofty. Last time, only the Eternal Sword Lord had attacked seriously. Many super great emperors had not truly displayed their abilities. All the gods fell silent when they heard the human ancestors' words. If the law of the heavenly path were reconstructed, it would be like the ancient heavenly path era. At that time, there would probably be something like the 8 legions that helped maintain the law in the world. The human ancestor was hinting at them. In addition, they feared the human ancestor. It was not like before, where great battles occurred everywhere. Only small scuffles continued without stopping, appearing everywhere. The 3 invasive forces felt the threat, and did not dare to act in a high-profile manner anymore. Yi Futian had also sacrificed 3 months for this. In these 3 months, he could have cultivated in isolation for 20 years, but he had to make this sacrifice for the cultivators of the Divine Prefecture and Heaven Realm. Now that the war had been reduced greatly, Yi Futian could finally stop cultivating. Yi Futian went to the peak of a black mountain of an empty continent in the original realm. He cultivated alone, not wanting to be disturbed, so he chose this remote area. Donghuang the Great and the others saw Yi Futian in his micro-heavenly path world, but they did not say anything. Yi Futian had only gone through 3 months outside, but they had gone through 20 years in here. This meant that Yi Futian had missed 20 years of cultivation. However, Yi Futian had saved many cultivators. Whether he had made the right or wrong choice could only be answered with time. Donghuang the Great only wished that they would not lose to time. However, when Yi Futian had led the army into battle everywhere, he had not let those on the path of the emperors participate. Their first priority was cultivation. People like Gu Donglu and Donghuang Diyuan did not participate. They stayed in his micro-heavenly path world to cultivate. For them, improving their abilities was the most important task. Nowadays, more and more strong figures in the Great Emperor Plane were on Yi Futian's side. After all, even if they did not count the cultivation time from before, it had been half a year since this war started in the outside world, but 40 years had passed in the micro-heavenly path world. Before this, they had also cultivated for many years with Yi Futian's help. That day, the micro-heavenly path world was already like an entire world. Like the outside world, it had its own world law and spiritual qi. If a random person were thrown into here, they would not even distinguish the worlds clearly. Yi Futian checked everyone's cultivation statuses. The core figures had gradually all entered the path of the emperors. Gu Donglio's cultivation of breaking his path was also becoming progressively complete. If he exited, he would definitely give the world a surprise. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.